Hi, my name is Robert Aguirre, pastor at Glendale Church of the Brethren, and we are so glad you decided to join us in worship this Sunday morning. I truly hope you're blessed by the teaching, the hymns, the special music, and that you can connect with God during this time. Our text for today is found in Matthew 6:16 through 18, and we're going to get right to it, all right? Talking about fasting. When you fast, do not look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show people they are fasting. I tell you the truth, they have received their reward in full. But when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face, so that it will not be obvious to others that you are fasting, but only to your Father, who is unseen. And your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. So there you go, talking about fasting. And if you remember, this is the section where Jesus starts off with the warning. And he says, be careful, you do not do your acts of righteousness to be seen by others. In other words, he's saying, watch your motivation. Make sure you're not doing these things just for the recognition of it. It's because you enjoy being seen by others. And so far Jesus talked about giving to the needy, talked about prayer, and now obviously we're talking about fasting. So these are all spiritual disciplines or practices that has the potential to be seen by others in the public setting, especially in this time period. People are going to see your acts of charity. People are going to see that you're praying longer during the time of prayer. And here people can see that you are tired and hungry when you are fasting, all for the potential of being recognized here. All right. So Jesus reinforces this point with each example. These are the wrong ways to be doing this for the wrong reasons. Be careful. And there's other examples he probably could have given, and probably we could think about some contemporary examples, but these are the examples he gave. So we're going to look at fasting and kind of close off this little 3-week section, all right? So fasting. Maybe, admittedly, it's not quite as common as prayer or being charitable, depending on who you are. Maybe you grew up, fasting regularly as part of your spiritual disciplines. But fasting. So today I want to ask and answer the question: what is fasting, and how is this a spiritual discipline? How is skipping a meal or skipping several meals connect me with God somehow in some way? That's a very basic question, right? What is fasting, and how does this help my walk with God? What's the point of this? Okay? That's the question. I remember my first time fasting when I was a very young, impressionable Christian, just trying it out and seeing that, others fasted and there's fasting in the Bible, so I fasted. And I remember feeling like the only thing I could think about was how hungry I was and what I was going to eat when I was done fasting. And I really didn't see what I gained from how that made me connect with God. I was just starving, and that's the only thing I could think about. And I look back on that thinking, well, I could have done that a lot differently than I did so many years ago. So anyway, and I think lots of times we'll read a passage and we'll think right away, what does this have to do with me or the contemporary? But this one especially, go back to Biblical Interp 101 in seminary, is we first have to answer the question, what did it mean for them back then? How was it significant for them? And that really helps us to have a contemporary conclusion of what it could mean for us today. Okay, so we're going to do that. I'm going to do a quick journey of some examples of fasting in the Bible. So why did they fast? Okay, well, I think we can see that fasting and prayer were connected. Sometimes in the Bible, they're just praying, and they prayed for this, or they prayed for God's guidance, or they prayed for an answer or protection. But sometimes they were praying and fasting. And it seems like when they did that, there was maybe, greater strength to it, or greater faith in it. Some examples, Ezra 8:23, we fasted and petitioned our God about this, and he answered our prayer. And of course, in Acts 13, the New Testament church was selecting missionaries. And so they went to a house church, and they were praying, and they were fasting for God's guidance and direction. It says, after they fasted and prayed, they placed their hands on them and sent them off. So God helped them to discern who should be the missionaries when they were praying and fasting. So it goes hand in hand. They talk about praying and fasting. And like I said, just from looking at some of these examples, you can see that it seems like there's an extra layer to it than just simply praying. Probably the best example of this is found in Mark chapter 9. And this story, Jesus' disciples were trying to cast out a demon, and they couldn't. And And the thing is, they had actually done this before. Jesus had sent them out to different villages, and they had cast out demons, they had performed miracles, and they reported back to Jesus in excitement what they had done. But in this time, they couldn't do it. They couldn't cast out the demon, and so the father of the child who's was possessed by the demon went to Jesus and said, I went to your disciples, and they couldn't cast him out. Can you cast him out? Can you help me? Of course, Jesus is a little bit frustrated with his disciples, but then he cast the demon out. And later the disciples come to Jesus and say, why couldn't we do it? Why couldn't we cast out this demon? And Jesus says, this kind can come forth by nothing but by prayer and fasting. So when you look at that, it seems like there's like a different level. Like there's praying, and there's praying and fasting. And the praying and fasting together maybe made the prayer stronger. It seems obvious in this scenario anyway. So there's prayer and fasting together, like fasting complemented the prayer somehow, somewhere. We're still not quite there yet, but we're looking at examples so far. Right? Prayer and fasting go together. Why else would they fast? Seems like we look at some more examples. There's this element of self-purification in fasting. Like somehow it made them feel like they were cleaner or holier as they fasted. Okay, Deuteronomy 9 is a good example of this as well, where Moses is going to literally encounter God in the mountain, and God's going to give Moses the 10 Commandments written on stone tablets. And so Moses goes up to the mountain, but he doesn't go to God right away. He goes up to the mountain, and then for 40 days and 40 nights, he prays and fasts. And then he goes to God, and God gives him the tablets. And so when you look at that story, it seems like Moses is saying, I'm not ready to encounter God. I want to get right with God. I want to be as clean and holy as I can. I want to be ready, so I'm going to pray and fast. And it just seemed like, for whatever reason, there was this belief that made them holier by fasting. All right? And in other examples, it's kind of similar, not quite with food, but there's other examples where they're about to go to war, and so they they abstain from sexual relations, and with the belief that God would join them in battle. Other times, some prophets or priests, they would abstain from strong drink, just because they were set apart as holy men before God, and so they lived a life of fasting from wine, from drink, and it's kind of similar in some ways, where hey, if I abstain from this, that makes me holier or cleaner or part of my calling from what I'm doing. Okay, so it's kind of a ritual there, self-purification ritual of fasting. And what else? Well, I think the most famous example is found in Jesus. And when we look at the example, this kind of starts to bridge forward to the contemporary a little bit. In Matthew 4, 1 through 2, the text says, Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. So there's a lot to unpack in these two verses here. Okay? So Jesus knows sometime soon he's going to encounter the devil and be tempted. And so somehow, some way, Jesus believes that by fasting, he's going to prepare him for that encounter. Okay? And when we think of Jesus, we think of perfection, we think of holy, we think of perfect. But this was a legitimate temptation. Okay? We can't neglect that. We can't overlook the fact that this was a real temptation, that the devil was going to present Jesus with an alternative for him and say, look, you don't need to go to the cross. You don't need to suffer. You can still accomplish your mission. Look, I'll give you the kingdoms. And this would have been a legitimate temptation of Jesus. And we know later on in the Gospels that Jesus says, Father, take this cup from me. If there's another way, we can do it. I'm open for that. But nevertheless, not my will, but your be done. Like he was reluctant to do so to some degree. And so the devil was feeding into that and going to tempt him to say, you don't need to go to the cross. Why do that? I'll give you the kingdoms. I'll give you authority. So that would have been a legitimate temptation from Jesus here. And so Jesus was preparing for that. Okay? So how does he prepare? By fasting. He fasts for 40 days, 40 days. I'm going to be ready for the devil. So I'm going to fast. When I was thinking about this, I thought of the analogy of like an athlete, like a pro boxer or somebody who's getting ready for a match or an event. They train, right? They run. They want to be. They lift weights. They spar. They want to be as tip-top shape for that and their event or match or whatever it is. And they're getting ready for it. And so Jesus gets ready for the devil. And he gets ready by fasting. Okay, so we're still not quite there. We still haven't answered the question, but we're getting close, right? I think we are. So how does fasting prepare Jesus to encounter the devil? Remember, the point isn't to not eat. That's not the point. The point is to resist evil, to resist the devil, especially in this scenario, right? And if you just remember from last week where we were talking about prayer, part of the Lord's Prayer is, lead us not into temptation and deliver us from the evil one. Of course, this is who Jesus is facing right now. So it's about avoiding evil, about not giving in to temptation. Okay? Now Ephesians talks a lot about being alert, being ready, and avoiding evil. So a couple of passages from there. The author says, be very careful how you live because the days are evil. Now that sounds kind of morbid, right? But in fact, he's actually saying there's lots of opportunities to do evil, to harm others, to disconnect with God. Like, be very careful, be alert, be ready. And later on he says, put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. That's exactly what Jesus is doing. Pray in the Spirit on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. Be alert and always keep on praying. So they're talking about, you never know when temptation is going to come. You never know when you're going to be in a scenario where you might give in to temptation and you might harm someone else. You might harm your relationship with God. So they're saying, always be ready. Always be alert. Which is probably why they fasted twice a week. They fasted on Tuesdays and Thursdays as part of this. For some reason, we still haven't quite answered that question yet. That helped them to resist evil and temptation. Prayer and fasting. Okay, so prayer and fasting have to do with being alert and being ready to recognize and avoid the temptation of evil. So how did fasting help Jesus? So far we looked at scenarios where fasting strengthened prayer. Okay? Where it seems like it took your prayer to the next level, if you will. And I think we can relate to that. I think when there's a big event or when there's something that's really, really on your heart, or maybe there's a family member that is sick, we ask more people to pray. And I think unconsciously we believe the more people to praying, the better. Right? Like maybe it gives the prayer more power, or maybe it just makes us feel like our faith is increased, but we do that. We say, hey, the more people praying, maybe the prayer is going to be stronger, or maybe my faith is going to increase because there's more, but we do that. And I think the same thing is here. Fasting and prayer perhaps increase their faith in the prayer. What else? Fasting was a form of purification, okay, where they felt like it made them clean before God. But here, the fasting is a form of self-denial. It's this discipline of self-denial. So for 40 days and 40 nights, Jesus is saying no to himself. He's saying, no, I'm not going to eat. No, I'm not going to break my fast. His body is telling him, you're hungry, eat your food, eat. And he's saying, no. He's saying no for 40 days, no. So then guess what happens? The devil comes. And now Jesus is saying no to him. He's been training his body to say no to yourself, no to what I want, no to my desires. And now the evil is presenting itself. And now Jesus is saying no. He's used to saying no, right? I think the more we study this example of Jesus, the more we can sort of see that. I think fasting starts to become a little clearer, at least today, in the contemporary. It's this spiritual discipline of self-denial. When you think about it, if you regularly train yourself to saying no to your needs, to your wants, and you're saying no, maybe when temptation comes, or this bad vice comes, you're ready to say no. You've been trained to say no. You can say, no, I'm not going to do that. It might be anything. It might be pornography. It might be retaliation. It might be marital unfaithfulness. It might be anything. You're saying, I'm already accustomed to saying no. I'm just going to say no here too. I think that's what Jesus did, right? You're just saying no. No to the evil one. No to temptation. Because you have been training yourself to say no as a spiritual discipline. It's not just avoiding food, it's saying, I'm going to train myself to spiritually say no. And I'm going to be ready. I'm going to be alert for evil and temptation. Yes? Maybe? So, let's do a quick review. Fasting and prayer, they go hand in hand. Right? So when we ask ourselves the question, why should we fast today? We can see that fasting and prayer, they go hand in hand. And as one person said in the Bible study, as we were discussing this, that when they fasted, they prayed a lot more, because that fasting and prayer go hand in hand. Right? So fasting and prayer together. And maybe it simply increases the faith in your prayer. Hey, I'm fasting too. God's going to answer my prayer. And now I have more faith in the prayer. Maybe it's that simple. So that becomes a spiritual discipline, because it connects with your prayer life. What else? Fasting. It's this conscious desire to connect with God. When you look at the ways in which it was done for like purification for yourself, it's saying, I want to be right with God. I want to connect with God. Okay? And I remember the second time I fasted, when I was much older, every time I was hungry, instead of thinking about food, I was thinking about, I need to connect with God. I need to be right with God. Right? And so that's what I was thinking about. And that goes back to this point of purification. And just constantly telling, every time my stomach growled, I'm saying, I got to be right with God. Okay? So and in doing so, it becomes a spiritual discipline. It becomes a good thing. It's a constant reminder, be right with God. Connect with God. Instead of having that meal, pray. And then find ways in which I can reconnect or be right with God. What else? And as the example of Jesus fasting was this engaging discipline of self-denial. And it trains you to say no to temptation, to say no to the evil one, because you're already telling yourself no to your own desires. And then when some other desire comes that's harmful, you're saying no again. Yeah? So, and in doing so, it becomes a spiritual discipline that helps you with your walk with God, and it helps you be ready for temptation, helps you to avoid evil, and it helps you not to harm others. It's good. And that's a spiritual thing. All right? And so I hope this helps. I hope that we answered the question. Maybe I didn't. Maybe you're still, I don't get it. Maybe you're still confused and saying, it's just not eating food. So maybe I failed in that regard. But I do want to encourage you. We believe as Protestants that we can go straight to God. Then pray to God and seek God's wisdom and guidance in this. Maybe He can show you something that I missed and help you to discover, and maybe see if fasting is a spiritual discipline for you. Okay? But we can't forget the main point. And that main point is that if you are fasting, don't flaunt it. Don't show it off. Don't look, I'm so tired, I'm so hungry because I'm fasting. No. It's between you and God. It's not about recognition. It's not about attention. It's just something you do between you and God. Okay? So my friend, that's our teaching. Hope that helped. Next, we have a brand new song, contemporary song by Juice and Lynn. It's called Brother. And it's a very simple song with a simple message, but I love it. And it reminds me of this teaching of Jesus. The song says, when I look into the face of my enemy, I see my brother. And it says that over and over again, telling you there is no enemies. That it's just everyone's all brothers or sisters, right? And so this song pretty much embodies the Sermon on the Mount. And I know you're going to be blessed by it. Take a look. Hope you like that song. Very simple and great message though, right? When I look into the face of my enemy, I see my brother. What a Christian message. What a message that embodies the teachings and person of Jesus, right? Anyway, great song. And that's our service for this morning. We got to keep praying for this pandemic and for people struggling to get another vaccination or getting their first vaccination. Also pray for people that are nervous about it. There's some people that are just kind of hesitant. So, I'm just not too sure about it. Maybe there's fear that it was rushed. I talked to someone recently who said, I need to do a little more research, and now I feel better about it. So I think some people are still kind of on the fence. Some of us are like, sign me up, and some people are nervous about it. So we just pray that God can, take away people's fears, and that people, if they want to wait, that they can wait in safety, and when the time comes, they'll be ready for it. So I pray for everyone that is dealing with this difficulty in different ways. We've all had highs and lows and ups and downs during this last year now. I pray that we can stay together as a church and somehow as a country in this very difficult time. But I pray that we can embody this message and this teaching of Jesus, and we can live it out with one another. So we're going to end with the bonus song called The Love of God, sung by Melia, played by Elia. Just a reminder that God is love and God's love is infinite. And God loves you for who you are, the way you are. Amen. So we're just going to close our service with this song called The Love of God. Hope you enjoy it and have a blessed week. Amen.